Good evening to both of you. Mandy, let me come to you first. We've seen some very dramatic images of protests from both the countries. How is the situation playing out in Holland to start with?
Well, certainly there's a lot of tension there. The Wilders group only represents a small portion of it, but it certainly ignited a lot of tensions. It's divided the country, and certainly in a wider political arena, it's put the country on the map, but for all the wrong reasons. And it's left a lot of people really worried about its international reputation, seen as a very kind of Islamophobic country.
Mohsin, Ankara has threatened the quote-unquote harshest retaliation for the minister being barred from Rotterdam. What does this mean? How much damage can Turkey inflict?
Well, actually, just maybe an hour ago, the justice minister spoke somewhere elsewhere in Turkey and said that the refusal to grant this courtesy to its ministers actually is a breach of 1961 Vienna Convention of Diplomatic Relations, and they are considering legal options. It is going to harm. It's going to have an immediate impact on trade ties. Of course, diplomatic ties have been hit, but we'll have to wait and watch because both countries are busy at the moment. There are campaigns for yes or no on the referendum happening across Turkey, and the campaigns and the fervor for elections is in full swing in the Netherlands as well. We'll have to wait and watch what actually happens on the ground. But at the moment, the rhetoric on both the sides is very high. The tempers are very volatile. That's what I can tell you at the moment.
Right, and amidst the escalating tensions between the two countries, Holland's Freedom Party leader Wilders said all Erdogan supporters should leave the country. I want to play out that soundbite before I come to the guests.
I invite them all to leave Holland, to go to Turkey and to never come back, because then their loyalty is certainly not to Holland but to the Turkish Republic.
Mandy, 2 days before the national election, Wilders is leading protests outside the Turkish embassy in Holland. Is this diplomatic crisis expected to tilt this election in his favor, which is a very, very close election, I understand?
It's a very close election. There's still polling that his party's likely to come second place. Still, that's an incredible leap forward for his party that was on the fringes for a very long time. So it is a big worry seeing this for many kind of more unifying Europeans, to see this far-right group really leapfrog and not necessarily lead the polls, but coming second place with every real chance of possibly taking the lead. It's a concern for those who want to see unification in a party. It's certainly not harming his campaign. It seems to be galvanizing a lot of support, where people are starting to look a bit more inward and are slightly more xenophobic.
Mohsin, not just the Netherlands, we know France and Germany, among others, are looking at elections later this year, and there's been a lot of anti-Muslim rhetoric in those countries too. Is all of this strengthening the Turkish president's case for the referendum he's going to next month?
Well, it is, but at the same time, it is also, as is the feeling in Turkey, that it is basically a display of contradiction of its own principles on part of Western European countries. Particularly, I can tell you about like the Austria, the Netherlands, and Germany. So that is the kind of understanding here. It is definitely going to strengthen that sentiment, but at the same time, which Turkey has been maintaining all along, it also plays to the double standards, quote unquote, as Turkey says, of the European countries, basic contradiction of its own principles of democratic values and freedom of expression. What is more important here is also to understand that the campaigns which actually triggered this diplomatic row between Turkey and the Netherlands to say, actually what has been happening on the ground is these ministers had gone to campaign for the yes side of the vote, looking ahead of the Turkish referendum on the 16th of April. But at the same time, rallies were allowed to take place for the opposition parties, which actually rallied for the no vote in the same countries. So that is an argument that is being played out here in Turkey at the moment. Is that why is it that only a yes vote rally has been denied, access to ministers who hold diplomatic passports has been denied, and not the other side? There are opposition groups that have carried out rallies in Germany, Austria as well. Why was that not stopped? But these rallies have been stopped. So that is something to watch out for, and that is the argument which is playing pretty much up in the diplomatic circles and in the government in Turkey as well.
That's a fair question, Mandy. Any explanation to these questions coming from the government in Holland?
No, it's absolutely a fair question. And I can only speculate that, you know, just as Germany and many other more kind of centrist parties have to now appeal to that far right that is certainly gaining tractions. They have the polls coming in 2 days, as you say, and they start to appeal to the far right. That could be at play at the minute, but it is absolutely a fair question. If Europe claims to have freedom of speech and represent all sides, why would they deny one side and not the other? I can only speculate again that this is pressure to seem a bit more on the right side of the vote, which will likely take a lot of the vote in this coming election.
Right, and I'll come back to that, being on the right side of the vote and whether this has precipitated the shift to the right, if I may, in Europe. But Mohsin, the Turkish president has called the Dutch, and I'm quoting here, they do not know politics or international diplomacy. He's called them Nazi remnants and fascists. How has one of the most enduring alliances, which has lasted over 4 centuries, come to this, where heads of state are calling each other names?
Well, as Mandy just said, it's a lot of internal politics actually eating up the domestic, the diplomatic conventions between the two countries. I mean, this has happened for the first time, as you rightly said, in 405 years of relations. That was pointed out by the Turkish thinkers and leaders as well. It's a hostile act, being regarded as a hostile act. But the term and the expression of sentiments comes at the back of continued suppression as the Turkish government or the AKP and other parties across the board, whether it is the ruling party or the opposition, have been saying. I mean, there's a timeline. This has been brewing up for over maybe a year and a half now. I mean, last year there was a teleconference which the Turkish president was supposed to address over video in Germany, which was stopped by a court, and nothing was done about it. I mean, there was a strong protest registered by the Turkish side, but Germany never took it very seriously. There has been a timeline of events. It happened on 2nd of March when an AKP rally was not allowed to take place in Germany, but at the same time, only a week before, there was an opposition rally which was allowed to go ahead. So I mean, I think at the moment it is these terms and these unpleasant remarks are actually being exchanged on both sides. While you see the rhetoric from the Turkish side is really high, at the same time, the use of excessive force on these protesters in Netherlands has not really gone down well. I mean, the newspapers in Turkey are full of front page headlines with bold pictures and images of protesters being handled really badly. You've seen dogs let loose on the protesters, people being beaten harshly. There are dozens injured. So I think at the moment it's really not auguring well for the Western European countries, and it will be very difficult for them to justify this act in the international community.
Right, and my colleague Surya Gangadharan also joining us here. Surya, as we look at developments in Europe, how would the government of India view all of this, and how does this impact India? Right, I'm told we will be joined by Surya in just a bit, but Mandy, we were talking about how this could be a bellwether election as Europe is increasingly shifting to the right. Is that how it's being seen, and has this crisis then precipitated that shift?
Well, certainly, you know, people are waiting and watching to see what the results of the election will be. But there's certainly a feeling that that Europe is shifting to the right, that there is a lot of anger among the population that their needs haven't been met. And it started, they looked to the U.S., where Trump's using that use of rhetoric and really kind of pinning the blame on immigrants and people who are kind of outside of their culture. And you're seeing that shift equally happen in Europe, and you're seeing a lot of xenophobia, you're seeing a lot of Islamophobia that's happening. So, people are waiting and watching, and that's the concern. And just to go back to his point about letting loose dogs on protesters, it is particularly offensive to a Muslim population to have dogs being used as a way to control a population. So whether the Netherlands weren't thinking about it, but certainly that's going to inflame a lot more tension among the Muslim population.
Right, and the anti-Muslim rhetoric in Holland may be overstretched. Let's look at the numbers to get a better perspective of how things stand in a country with a total population of a little over 17 million. Official figures put Muslim numbers at about 6% right now, and the public sense is that the Muslim population is growing at 26%. While official estimates put it at less than 7%. So a lot of this has to do with perception as well. Mohsen, if I could come back to you, what does it mean for the NATO alliance?
Well, I think at the moment there is a lot of restraint being exercised. There are larger stakes for the NATO alliance. There is the fight against Daesh. There is the fight against PKK. There is domestic terrorism as well, which PKK, the terror organization, has unleashed inside Turkey. So I think that this might stop short of damaging the alliance in particular, because there is an understanding there are bigger goals to achieve, and Turkey has been very responsible in that matter. They've also helped Europe a lot when it comes to dealing with the refugees. We are just a few days short of the Turkey-Europe refugee deal, which has seen more than 3.5 million refugees being housed inside Turkey, with, according to European Union itself, Europe not reciprocating equally. So I think it's not going to impact in practical and technical terms the NATO's alliance, because they've got bigger things to handle at the moment. But yes, it's going to cause a little bit of bad blood. It's going to cause a little bit of tension amongst its members.
And before I wrap this, Mandy, how do NATO allies see these threats of retaliation? We know that Angela Merkel and in France, Macron has spoken about the way the Turkish ministers and the president is speaking.
There are great concerns, but let's not forget that Turkey is the biggest member of NATO in Europe. Outside, the biggest member is the U.S., but Turkey is massively influential in NATO, and they do need them on side. So it's, the balance of power really lies within Turkey's reach when it comes to NATO. But certainly Angela Merkel has been expressing her concern, and it's going to be a delicate relationship they have to maintain, because they really do need all members of NATO to keep that alliance strong.
Right. Mandy Clark, Mohsen Mughal, thanks very much. Appreciate both of you joining us this evening on Gravitas.